to talk about like who you were as a kid. So you start skating, you know, really like as like a preteen, and you know, it wasn't a cool activity.
No.
You know, you've mentioned you were bullied.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, also, I mean, just in the 70s, like older kids were ruthless.
Yeah.
And you know, they make fun of your name, they make fun of your appearance, they make fun of stuff way
you were
beyond
always
your
Tony
control.
Hawk.
I was, yeah, but
which is a cool name, but it's kind of weird also.
Okay, well, let's put it this way: in high school, I was bony cock, so it didn't feel like it was a gift to have that name. It didn't feel like it was advantageous. It was just more like, oh, great, now I got an easy name to rhyme with.
Yeah,
and you know, people are gonna. So anyway, and so being a skater, that was the furthest thing from cool you could do. Like you were way below nerds on the hierarchy of what's cool in school.
Really?
So yeah,
you were below the nerds.
Absolutely, yeah. So I had to hide my skateboard.
This is when Revenge of the Nerds was like coming
Yeah.
out.
So I had to hide my skateboard when I would go to school. Like sometimes I would hide it behind the lockers, or I'd hide it in the bushes, or just not bring it at all because I just didn't want that attention. And so I was kind of a ghost in the hallways. But as soon as the bell rang, I was at the skate park until it closed.
And that was your community.
That was my crew, yeah.
But you were also kind of an outlier within the skating community.
Yeah, so when I really got into skating and would turn pro and whatnot, I got a lot of flack for my style because I was more trick oriented, and back then it was all about, it was like Dogtown Z-Boys. How much style do you have? How do you flow? What do you look like in the air? And I was like, I know how to spin and flip my board.
You wanted to do new things.
Yeah, I wanted to do new things. And so that was just not the in style. So I'm in this world, this community that I love. And that already sets me apart from the general populace and my classmates and things like, oh, so you still skateboard? Like, grow out of it. And then I fell in love with skateboarding, and then I'm kind of shunned in skateboarding because I have this weird style. So very early on, I learned what it was like to be isolated like that. And I think that kind of, you know, as whatever doesn't kill us makes us stronger, but that kind of helped me navigate later in life through other challenges like being called a sellout, social media, hate, all those things. You know, I was already steeped in people talking shit to my face. So you're not really going to affect me that greatly if you're giving me a hard time on social media.
Well, and it was really it was a very similar experience for me coming into crypto because, you know, I had been this rebel. I mean, I didn't have success at a young age, but I was always kind of like, you know, I also wasn't like even a nerd. I was really like a deadhead stoner, kind of fuck up, getting thrown out of schools and stuff. I was an outlier, you know, in all my communities, even amongst my fuck up friends. And then when I came into crypto, it was the same exact thing. I loved crypto, so that united me with the rest of the people in the industry, but I was like very liberal and progressive, and everybody was like an anarchist and a libertarian. And so like ideologically, kind of similar to your experience in skateboarding, I was very different from the community I had joined. We had this same shared end goal of Bitcoin being adopted. It probably the same as you know skateboarding, you know, being a real legitimate sport. But the people I was with was very different, and I think that builds a sense of perseverance because, you know, talking to you going pro and the money getting real, that didn't last forever, right? You know, you went pro.
Yeah.
You made money for, when is this? This is the 80s at this point?
Yeah. Well, basically, I started making decent money as I was a junior, senior in high school. And everyone is trying to figure out what college they're going to go to, what career choices. And I thought, I guess I have a career because I'm making more money than my parents ever did.
Right. And you got yourself a house when
So my dad was getting concerned because he saw that I was making this money and I was spending it wildly because I thought it would never end.
You're a teenager, yeah.
Yeah, and so he said, I think you should invest in real estate and buy yourself a house. And so he co-signed for me to buy a house while I was still a senior in high school.
That's so crazy.
But I hadn't turned 18 yet, so he had to co-sign.
Right.
So yeah, that was pretty crazy.
Did things ever start to get like out of hand? Because when you're that young, you've got money, you probably or even though you're somewhat of an outlier in the skating community, you're still a pretty cool guy at this point because you're now like number one ranked skater at this point. Like, was there partying? Like, did you see yourself ever?
Yeah, but it wasn't excessive. I never fell into hardcore partying because I saw how it affected other people that I knew who had a lot of talent.
Well, and that's a big issue in the skating community because I saw that. I saw these guys that started to get really good. They got their first sponsorship deal. Then all of a sudden they're partying, they're drinking, they're sleeping around, and they're not skating.
Yeah, I guess I never thought of skateboarding as a means to an end. It wasn't like it was going to be my springboard into finally being popular or getting to party
Right.
and meeting girls and things like that. It was more like I just loved doing it, and whatever kept me doing it, that's the path I was going to choose. But of course, you're 17, you live on your own. Like when you're in high school, it's always whose parents are out of town. My parents were always out of town. So my house was the party house for sure.